For staying tuned, Nigeria's inflation recorded an 8-month steady deceleration in its headline inflation, but this was brought to a halt by a marginal spike in December 2021 headline inflation from 15.4% in November 2021 to 15.63% in December 2021. The rise in inflation is said to be largely dependent on the surge in demand during the December festivities. Food inflation rose from 17.2% in November to 17.37% in December. But on a month-on-month basis, there was an increase of 2.19%. The core inflation, which relates to non-agricultural products, maintained an upward trend. It increased 13.85% in November to 13.87% in December, which was largely a reflection of the impact of currency depreciation and liquidity challenges in the forex market. Let's analyze the impact of the increase in inflation on the Nigerian economy. And joining me this afternoon is the finance manager, GNC International Limited, Mrs. Yemisi Shola Oyegbade. It's good to see you, Mr. Oyegbade. It's been a while. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to Louis. It's been a while too. Nice to be here once again.
Yes, I would ask the normal way that we would love to know, were you expecting a shift in our inflation figures? Were you expecting that increase that we saw yesterday when NBS reeled out the figures?
Oh, thank you, Tolu. General consensus, as we all know, and as you rightly said, was that we're going to continue to be experiencing the deceleration on base year effect. And it was projected that inflation was going to be around 14.9 levels. But it came out at 15.63. So it beat analyst expectations, but it wasn't so surprising. As you have rightly alluded to it, it was December period. You know, if you look at the inflation data itself, the core didn't move much. But the food inflation, as you've rightly said, it jumped from 17.21 to 17.37, you know. And I think if you look at clothing index, that one too also went up. I think alcoholic beverages, tobacco, housing, energy, they all went up, and you can tie these ones to the effect of the December period. Everyone knows that at December, there's a lot of money that is flowing around in the system. There's a lot of buying going on. Organizations want to buy end of year gifts for their staff. They want to buy end of year gifts for their clients. You know, there's a lot of gift exchange that goes on around that time, and also coupled with the fact that there's been depreciation at that point. So whilst it wasn't expected, really it wasn't that surprising, because so what it just simply means was that those effects were actually larger. They were more than the base year effect, and the inflation went on the uptick.
A good way to start the conversation, but let me follow up and say, do you think the NPC, that's the Monetary Policy Committee, would have a rethink and maybe want to increase rates because of this hike in inflation, or this increase in inflation?
Well, we've seen inflation at higher levels than this, and the CBN has been very careful. Even the time they have moved, they've been very careful to maintain the rate. So it's not expected, except it becomes sustained. It's not expected that rates will be moved. Although another factor that you have to look at was what the CBN governor mentioned, I think, some days back, that we've experienced low FDIs. You know, when you don't have the foreign exchange coming in, it definitely is going to impact your currency, which would also affect the inflation as well. So maybe sometimes down the year, if that is sustained, if this increase continues, the central bank might look in that direction. But right now, it's not looking so, because it's been at higher levels, and the central bank doesn't want to just rock the boat.
A good one there. Okay, let's now look at the prices of foods now, which is also important, like you identified in your first submission, that has rise. We saw the rise in bread, cereals, product, meat, fish, almost across all of the sectors, all food produce or food crops. Now, what do you think, despite insecurity and all that we face in the country, what's your projection for food price as we move on in 2022? Do you think we'll continue to see this increase if nothing is done?
As we move on to the year 2022, definitely we know that we've been battling with this perennial insecurity issue for some time now, and which has really affected inflation in the food basket. Going into 2022, so I would say that probably December is just based on the buyings of people going to festivity mode and all of that. That was December. It might not really progress further because, I mean, we also know that there were some harvests that came, that there are quite some harvests that come around in this period, and it was expected that it would have continued on a decline, but it went up. So it might not really be sustained. I mean, all the festivities is gone now, except for, well, we know that February is coming when they're going to release the January figures. The January figures might not be so much different from December figures, but if the planned subsidy removal that's been built for sometimes in the first quarter comes up, then we might see a more uptick, not just across the food now, but for all the indices that have been measured. I had a personal experience towards the end of last year. There was something I needed to, a friend had introduced me to something that I wanted to use on the 31st of December. It was poultry, it was smoked poultry, and I'd sent some money to the guys, you know what, let me try your product before 31st December. Would you believe that between 29th and 31st, the price, that there was like a 20% price hike? Because by the time I called them on Friday, I wanted to place an order. There was a 20% price hike. So all of these pointed to the fact that it was a general period, and then, you know, a lot of things went up as well. Transportation was not the normal price that had gone up. So all of this would have a pass-through effect into the eventual price that the normal consumer will pay. But we don't see it going on into further into 2022, except the planned subsidy removal is implemented as planned by the federal government.
That one is a hard nut to crack. I thought about that. I wanted to add that to my second question, talking about subsidy removal and even removal of subsidy also on electricity tariff. Well, let's leave, because that, of course, would have an impact or an effect one way or the other on inflation figures. But earlier today, the president commissioned the rice pyramid in Abuja. I'm sure you must have heard about that and even seen videos online going all around. And I want to ask you this way: does this bring to fore all of the efforts of the central bank? Would we say that it's paying off eventually after all of the waitings? Because many said that there was a transition period. Is it like the period is over and now it's time to start getting the positives of the interventions, particularly in the agri space? Can this help bring prices down one way or the other?
Definitely, the interventions should help to bring the prices down, which is why the central bank has been on and on about it. So when the rice pyramid came about, I mean, everyone was excited, and I think I'd read something online today that it was going, and which is also expected. I mean, if you have 1 million bags, I don't know how many bags are there coming into the system, definitely prices should crash. And not just coming in the system alone. I'm hoping that it's going to be, we're getting to a point, if we are able to have harvested so much, we put into the system, and we have enough to be able to build up the rice pyramid, it's signaling that probably we're getting ready for exports. So what we just need to do is help these farmers, help them make their products export ready, so that Nigeria too can join the nations that export rice produce. You know, so this would definitely at least impact the price of that particular grain, rice. Once this goes on and the rice comes into the system, and so based on the effect of this, we can say that that Anchor Borrowers Program, especially for the rice farmers, is paying off. And I also know that the president, if I would digress into this, is trying to take a stock of his achievements as the administration is rounding up, and I believe that this is one of the achievements that the president has won for himself. So we hope to be able to see more wins like this, so that At the end of it all, the average normal Nigerian, the 1 naira you hold in your, at least by the time we have our local farmers, we're able to have the export capacity, the currency depreciation will be checked.
Now, almost finally, as we also move on again, let's talk about some economic projections that we've had, as inflation has already shown us that it's going to the high side already by January. We don't know if there will be, maybe it could drop as we move on. Well, let's see. We'll keep monitoring that. But global issues, COVID-19, Omicron cases, vaccinations, disruption issues, and all of that. What are your projections for Africa's most populous nation, despite all of these challenges?
Thankfully, Nigeria is making progress in terms of vaccination, and there's a lot of efforts going on to that. We know that by the time, globally, the pandemic had impacted everybody, it had impacted everyone. And I even read that you don't really need to do a full lockdown again to be able to mitigate the effect or minimize the effect of the pandemic. There are several modalities that can be put into place now. So looking at that and the effect on the general, on Nigerian economy and the global economy at large, the world is tired of being caged. So people want to be able to do things, but not necessarily return to business as usual, because we know that the way we do business, the way we go to work, the way we commute, things can never be the same. COVID-19 has come to change the face of everything. But on the back of that, I know that the CBN had projected that the economy was going to grow at about 3.1. The finance minister, when she was making her presentation, they had projected the economy was growing at, I think, about 4%. And the World Bank has said we're going to grow at 2.5%. All these growth projections are possible, but they are only possible on the back of infrastructure development. I know that a lot of infrastructure development has happened or is happening within this particular administration. It might not appear so, but there's been a lot of directed efforts at making sure that infrastructure and enabling environment comes into play for people. Whilst we are not there yet, but at least we can see steady progress. At least I have some of my colleagues that live outside of Lagos, and they work in Lagos, they commute by train. So by the time we have infrastructure, because we have a huge infrastructural gap, on the back of infrastructure, we should be able to make the projections that we have given ourselves. I think that is possible.
Before I let you go, in just 1-2 minutes, are you worried about our debt profile at the moment?
Oh, everyone should be worried. Everyone should be worried. Although the government has said that it's not a debt problem we have, it's a revenue problem we have. But I think it's something that we should look into. If there's a way that we can ensure that every kobo that is borrowed for a particular project is judiciously expended on that project, it's going to go a long way. Because right now it's like we're building a debt trap for generations yet unborn. But at the same time, if this borrowing, so borrowing is not the problem, but what you're borrowing for, if the borrowing is used for what it is planned for ab initio, and if we borrow for the right purposes, we build infrastructure, it's going to help. Over the holidays, I had to go out of town to Ibadan, and I was surprised. We had left very early, thinking, because I wanted to go by road, but it was a smooth journey. All the road was free, and I was like, this is not too much to ask for. You can imagine that all the roads are working, the railroads are okay, we have the trucks off. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of efficiency. And even though we have borrowed to do, because really it is when you want to do a project, you might not really necessarily have all the money to do it, but by the time you borrow for a project, companies borrow for projects, but the thing is they use the money judiciously. So whatever it is we're borrowing for, once we're able to expend it judiciously, we shouldn't really be bothered about the debt issue that we have. But the challenge is that most of the time the funding never goes, it's never expended as planned. And we now have a situation where we have a huge chunk, for example, like about 35% of this year's budgeted revenue is going to go into debt servicing. So that is a problem. Having not having a full view of what the borrowed funds, whether the borrowed funds are being fully expended on what they are meant for. If we borrow money and we use it for infrastructure, we will definitely reap the gains as a nation.
I must thank you so much, Finance Manager, GNC International Limited, Mrs. Yemisi Shola Oyegbade. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me once again.